Well, hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls from around the world. This is take two on prayer call. You missed this because you were at the first one when it cut out. I don't know. I'm kind of confused how to even begin to explain it, but I've got an interesting story to tell you guys. So I'm sorry if you're not here for this and y'all were here for the first one. It's was going really good. We were just getting warmed up, right? So we're gonna pick up where we left off here in just a second, but I'm gonna tell you a cool story. And this is how God works. And it's kind of cool because we were just talking about how nothing's coincidence. And so, we finally decided to do prayer call on the regular day, and we're getting closer and closer to the regular time, whether we liked it or not. The funny thing is, though, apparently they had scheduled maintenance on the internet. So the internet was supposed to be, we had to turn on the data and check it out. But I guess apparently the internet provider was doing maintenance and it was supposed to be down from midnight to 9 a.m. So we're fortunate to be here right now, only by the grace of God and very swift maintenance, I guess. So I will put this disclaimer out. If the internet goes down again and this stream cuts off, I will go to bed for real this time. But as y'all know, I'm about 7 hours ahead of Central Time over in the United States, and so it's kind of funny because so the internet goes out, and of course, my first thought's always, "Oh, they're out to get us." We really, I think I posted in the prayer call group, or had Sophia post it since it was from her phone. Um, that Leviathan ate our internet. It's kind of a joke 'cause we were talking about that. And sometimes when you stir the pot, you do get more spiritually attacked. I definitely know all about that. And then sometimes there can be outside influences over the internet connections as well. Well, hello, Secret Service. Welcome, Embryonic Cells. Welcome, Dr. Mike. Welcome back. J Dizzle for Shizzle, my nizzle. What's going on? Mind over matter. Welcome back. So yeah. Anyways, one of the things that we had just in between, we had just got started, or about halfway through the second devotional, and but before we started into that, we started talking about grief. So I've got a lot of prayer requests here written down, ready to put out there when we close out. And so I've been collecting them from all over, and it's I don't know. Anyways, the topic of grief came up, and so some people have lost a father recently, a mother fairly recently, and other loved ones, right? So we started touching on grief a little bit, and I try to draw from my personal experience, and so I was kind of sharing some of that, and trying to encourage and uplift and maybe give different perspectives to try to approach how to deal with grief. And everyone goes through the process differently. um, but what's crazy, right? So the internet goes out and I'm stuck like Chuck, and I can't really even get word out that the internet's down. So we got it out as best we could. And so anyways, once we saw it was going to be down till 9, I just figured we'd retry tomorrow. um, we all need some prayer, Secret Service, but I already have you down actually, but I'll put you down again for even more. Mo. I'm sorry, whatever you're going through must be tough, but you're not alone and you're not forgotten. So just hang in there. Hang in there. I'll just say that. So, and we'll catch up on the flip flop, figure out what's going on. So yeah, the internet goes down, find out it's not gonna come on back on till 9, so go ahead and go to bed and turn on TED Talk to listen to go to bed. And it was about breathing, breathing exercises, and it's gonna tie into something I was already gonna mention at the end. You're more than welcome. So yeah, we're sitting there and listening. I'm listening to this TED Talk, right? And I'm thinking, okay, well, I want to know about the breathing exercises. I used to be into that, and it's real helpful back in the day to help relax and all this. And anyways, this is something I've been thinking about doing, or getting into, trying to be healthier and whatnot. So, uh, turn on this TED Talk about the breathing exercises, and I guess there's some guy who's I didn't really read up all about it, but I looked at all this new agey stuff and I was like, oh, I'd rather hear the TED Talk guy. So I check it out, and what does he end up talking about? And it's only like 22 minutes long, but he wasn't even talking. Oh, wow. See, nothing happens by coincidence, but, and you're not here on accident. So, anyways, I need to focus here. Basically go to sleep. Can't do anything about prayer call. Kind of disappointed about getting shut down a little early, and it's no devil's fault or that I know of this time. It's not getting scroogled for a change, so it's really weird. But so I lay down and go to sleep, and I'm listening to this breathing exercise guy, and he doesn't even really talk much about breathing exercises, but he does talk about some important things about breathing, which I thought was real interesting. Like we think of breathing kind of like we think about. He is the example of our autonomic system. Like your heart beats on its own. You don't have to think about that. Your eyes blink on their own. You don't really have to consciously think about that. There's certain things your body does naturally. Your blood pumps, because your heart's beating, but I mean, your blood does what it does. I mean, everything's set up in the autonomic system to function on its own with autonomically, right? Or automatically. And so breathing, though, we can actually focus on breathing and we can control breathing. And there's different techniques in breathing to help expand your lungs, which is really helpful um, in many different areas for many different reasons. And I don't want to get into all the tech mumbo jumbo and science, all that, but um, yeah, it was so crazy because we were talking about grief, and it's a hard topic to talk about. And this guy, he talked most of the time about grief and how breathing actually helps deal with grief. And he used and cited a lot of sources for references that he made in his talk. But he was quoting some pretty good science, or at least from some reputable schools that do studies on these things. And he was saying basically, like, you can't make this stuff up, right? We're talking about grief and everything, and we've talked about it for a couple weeks about how everybody feels heavy. It's a hard time to live in the world. It's a dark place, all that stuff, right? And so it's real easy to be negative or to find the negative things. You have to work really hard to find the positive or the beauty in life right now, more hard than maybe ever before, and on and on and on, right? So here he was talking about grief being scientifically, backed up in this statement, but grief is one of the underlying, if not the biggest underlying cause of anxiety and stress. So start thinking about it. Sleeplessness is also at epidemic levels globally, or worldwide, however you want to say it. And so, like, there's just all these connections to um, physical ailments and grief. And one of the things he pointed out, and I'm like the whole time thinking, wow, this is like everything we were just talking about. And I wish I had had this like, 30 minutes ago or whatever. And yeah, that's interesting. But so we're sitting there and listening to this and just like, man, he's hitting the nail on every nail he's hitting right on the head. Um, we live in a time when we're supposed to be the most connected, right? With technology and everything. I mean, we just thanked in the prayer, opening prayer, thanked God for being able to connect, and do what we're doing now. And so it's so weird to hear him say, like, you've got in your pocket a rectangle that's got, the world's information right there. And, like we're more connected than we've ever been, across the world. But yet the feeling of being alone has never been more severe, right? And I forget where it came from and what exactly the statistics were. I have to go back and listen to it. But the World Health Organization, which I'm not their biggest fan, some of their statistics they were saying, I'd have to look at when the TED Talk was, but he said 4 years. It was projected that 4 years from when he was given the talk, which I believe was this year, um, that within 4 years, anxiety and depression, I think, would be the two biggest. Um, I can't remember the way he worded it, but basically, like the world's biggest problem that's going to lead to more bigger health problems is basically anxiety and depression. And I forget the percentages of people worldwide that are on antidepressants and other medications for those things. And Ultimately, he wasn't saying that breathing was the solution, but I kind of think of it in a similar fashion. He basically was saying that breathing is one of the biggest things that helps you get to a place where you can deal with grief. And I never thought about it like that before, but he said so many cool things in such a short time. I couldn't believe how much of it really hit on with what was going on with what I see in myself and people around me, and it's been going on in the world for quite a while now, right? But it seems to be growing, and so, anyways, and this guy's like one of those. Oh, what was the way that they put it? I'm gonna quit trying to be so detailed and specific. I'm just really excited about this, but so we were talking about grief and prayer call. Internet goes down. Go to watch this breathing video. Guy ends up talking mostly about grief. I learned some new things about it. Fight or flight, and that's one of the things that happens. So we either deal with things and fight, whatever it is that is the obstacle, or we run away from it and flight. That's the natural physical response that we have to situations. And um, I can't remember the other. You have to. He said that when you relax, you put away the fight or flight, and he said something funny that you do instead, and it's like I don't remember, like, sit and soak or something like that, but, like, you get to a place to where instead of having a reaction of fight or flight, there is no reaction, and you're just in the present moment, and you're able to analyze it in a better way, and that breathing gets your focus to the moment, and so it's really cool, and the way that, he mentioned about grief, and this is the part that I think the big takeaway from it, right? Hey, Adam, what's up, buddy? One of the things was the biggest takeaway I got was he was mentioning how grief, we're not ever really taught how to deal with grief. Growing up, boys don't cry. That whole thing. Um, you know, the he used anger or aggression. It's not socially acceptable to e- express or emote your grief publicly. Right, but it's okay to be angry. So you'll get angry at road rage on the traffic, or you'll yell out and, whatever. But if you start crying or something, then wipe your tear away and say, "Oh, I don't know where that came from," or "I don't know what came over me." And just think about it, and it's like, yeah, I don't know. Grief is a hard thing to grasp, right? And so when you start thinking about it, it's like, yeah, I started thinking about what he was saying, and I was like, well, we're not really ever told how to deal with grief. And because of that, we don't know how to grieve properly. And then on top of that, the thing that really resonated after going through loss myself is like people want to be there for you, but they don't know how, so they run away. And so it's like when you need people the most, in times when you're maybe the weakest, people don't know how to help you. Sometimes the best way to help is to say, hey, it's going to suck for quite a while, but the sucking will be less over time. And then eventually maybe you can grow through the process, right? And that's kind of what I was saying in the prayer call earlier. Was like, hey, you'll never get over it, but you will get through it. If you just keep on keeping on. And so, like what he said, really resonated with all the things I said, but he actually had reasons why it made sense. And just what are the odds? You can't make this stuff up. I'm going to bed listening to this, and it all hits right on the money, and clearly not going to go to sleep during something that is that captivating. And then bada bing, bada boom, here we are. We've got the live stream back up and available. So the internet came on just in time to finish the video, right? So now I'm like laying in bed. Well, do I want to go to sleep or do I want to finish the prayer call? And it already kind of set my mind to do it tomorrow. And I prayed about it quickly. And, God didn't give that information in that video for no reason. And I almost feel like we had a break just to go on that tangent that God wanted us to go on. So um, he did one breathing exercise at the end, and it's kind of like what Secret Service is saying about breathe in 5, hold 5, and breathe out 5. I think it was breathe in for 4, um, and then breathe in for 7 more, and then breathe out for 8, and it's supposed to help you get to sleep. He actually gave some really compelling information about post-traumatic stress disorder and treating PTSD patients, in particular, combat veterans. That treating them, I think that he said that the numbers were up to 20 veterans a day lost to suicide, and that's staggering if you think about it. And one of the best methods that they've had, the Department of, or I think it's Department of Defense, was advocating that veterans, they were linking it with yoga and breathing exercises. There are some physical benefits to doing the motions of yoga, but yoga intrinsically is sun worship, or it's a form of uh, it's a spiritual practice. I'll just say that. So I don't have a problem with stretching or poses, but the symbolism and the value and meaning behind specifically yoga. If you do a yoga pose and it's just stretching or exercise, that's different than embodying and embracing all that it stands for. And I know a lot of people that are really into it, and to me, I'll stick with the breathing, thanks. But um, there's definitely something to the controlled breathing, and yeah, he pointed out the Navy SEALs use it, and they don't use things that don't work. So swimmers, it's real important in swimming. And ultimately, breath of life, breathing. Well, if you can't breathe, you don't live. I mean, it's that simple. So um, breathing better is important. So, but grief, dealing with grief, I never would have put together breathing and grief. One of the things I always heard about breathing that's really cool or interesting is that none of us breathe right. I never thought about it before, but there's a right and a wrong way to breathe. You breathe in through your nose, the oxygen goes to your brain. If you breathe in through your mouth, the oxygen goes to your brain too, but some of it goes to your stomach. That's doesn't usually lead to good things. um, they always say better out than in, right? So, um, you know, I think we forget how important breathing is, and because it is an autonomic function that we don't have to control, I think we forget to sometimes. So notice when you get tense if you're holding your breath, right? Um, it does help for sleep and anxiety for sure. And glad to see you, by the way, Mr. Brooks. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's so much benefit to breathing. Okay, I'll share a story with you guys about breathing. When I was in the military, we went through boot camp in the infantry, advanced infantry training portion, and we went through the gas chamber at Fort Benning, Georgia, right? Sand Hill. It was crazy. And so we get these gas masks, and the gas masks are, old training gas masks, not the kind you'd actually really use. Although you could, I wouldn't recommend it, but hey, something's better than nothing. And so they gas us with the CS gas, and it's supposed to be like 10 times stronger than tear gas they used to break up crowds. The canisters they shoot into the crowds you always see on the movies or in real life. Um, the CS gas is supposed to be a lot worse than that. It's like the worst thing they can gas you with without it killing you or being wrong. But some people actually do die from it. You're not supposed to. I had asthma as a kid, and I did lie about that to get into the military. But my asthma I outgrew it, or it went away once I got into soccer. So, anyways, long story longer, in boot camp, we get to the gas chamber. It's one of the scariest moments in boot camp that you fear, and the build up to getting there is horrible. And there's pictures everywhere because they film your cycle go through, and you can buy a video at the end and stuff. It's funny, but the best part everybody likes about the video is when they film everybody coming out of the gas chambers because you from the it's horrible. You Once the oxygen hits your face, it's after being gassed, it feels like needles. You start leaking out of your eyes, your nose, your mouth. I mean, it's disgusting. And so this is where the story gets good, right? So we're waiting in line. I'd lied about having asthma. My recruiter was like, "When you go in there, just tell him, answer all the questions like you're Superman. If the answer needs to be yes, you say yes." And so I was like, "Did you have asthma or do you have asthma?" And I'm like, "Oh no, I'm Superman over here." So get there. Now we're waiting in line, and at the moment when I'm like, "Oh, what's going on?" you can smell the gas from very far away, and it burns. And so you're sitting there thinking, "Uh-oh." And the drill sergeants are all like, "Oh, yeah, well, if you got asthma, now's about your last chance to speak up because as soon as you get into that gas chamber in the last cycle, I think a kid had asthma and lied about it and died." Now, they might just be saying it to scare somebody, but I looked into it, and I'm pretty sure someone actually did die the cycle before us. So I'm sitting here thinking, "Oh, no, I might die in here." Uh, so I got my gas mask, and, there's this other guy, that, I was training with, and he didn't have one, so I let him take mine. Big mistake. I should have let him scramble to find his own, but because what happens when you come out the other side of the gas chamber, you get snotted up, all that stuff gets in your gas mask. So he gets out, brings me my gas mask back before it's time to get in, and man, it's like covered in mucus, and I don't have time to clean it much. And so you put on this snotty gas mask, and the line is long, and you're waiting, and you go a step forward, and then get in. You go a step forward, and you're getting closer to getting in, and it's like a little shack, almost like you'd smoke meat in or something, right? And you can see a little smokestack at the top. So we get into this gas chamber, and or actually, right when we're in about the front doors, and it's you time to put your mask on, and so you put it on to make sure you got a good seal. Well, my mask was broken, and it didn't have a good seal at all. And so at this point, I'm about to start freaking out in the inside, right? Like, what do I do? And so I never got a proper seal on my mask. So that's basically like I'm just gonna be standing in this CS gas for, sometimes they have you in there for a while. And the whole point of it is you stand in there with your mask on, and you're in like about five people from left to right, about five people abreast, and maybe 5, 6 rows deep. And when you get to you walk in and the door shuts behind you and you wait in line. And then when that row on the far end leaves, then you step up one, a new row comes in. And so it's just like clockwork. So you get there at the end of the row. And when it's your time and you're at the very front, you got like these big drill sergeants. You got one at the back door, one at the front door. You got two on the sides, and you got one that's kind of running the operation. And then some outside. And once you get your turn at the front, everybody in that 5, 6 guy abreast, you got to take your mask off. And then when you take your mask off, they start drilling you, like asking you questions. They make you talk, so you have to breathe in the gas. That way, you know what it's like. Um, and so I think I'm like second in line. And so he goes to the first guy and gets him to start talking. And most of these guys, they don't get choked out till they first take the mask off and they get that first whiff of it. And then when they start talking, they just have to start breathing it. Now, you remember back at the time when I was growing up, if you heard my testimony, I think I was like 18, 19 at this time. So once I realized my gas mask had no seal, and once I realized that I was going to be taking in this CS gas the whole time, I started thinking about the breathing, right? And so one of the things I had to do was I had to seriously like think of some strategy to get through this. And so I was like, okay, well, if I squint my eyes, like when you're in a smoky bar or something, I was like, I can do that. I've been there before. And I was like, well, maybe if I don't just breathe naturally, maybe if I just pretend this CS gas is like a doobie, man. So I started smoking the gas, like, or breathing like I was smoking a doobie. I'd take a little tight winced breath in, I'd hold it as long as I could, and then I'd blow it back out. I am talking about the gas chamber in Fort Benning in boot camp, um, because we were talking about breathing before you got here, and you might want to rewind and check out some of the stuff because of the story about grief and how it ties into what happened in between the live streams. But so yeah, I just pretended I was smoking a doobie, and man, I can't swear for certain that it saved my life, but it definitely saved me a lot of problems. I'll say that. So by the time I got to my turn to take the mask off, I was already acclimated to the gas. And so it wasn't like I was getting hit hard like everybody else and choking and coughing and all that. I'd gotten used to it at the point, and it wasn't comfortable, but I was managing, right? So this is the real funny part. The first guy starts getting drilled, and he gets maybe halfway through a sentence and starts hacking and almost barfing, right? And one guy from the back, I don't remember if it was while we were at the front or waiting to go, but one guy had a panic attack and freaked out, started running from the back and tried to head for the exit door. And when he got to the exit door, the drill sergeant standing there put his arm out and like clotheslined him, and the dude almost did like a flip around his arm. And he made him sit there and take his mask off while he was like crying and freaking out, and then he let him out. He shouldn't have let him out, I don't think, but some people aren't cut out for that, and it is claustrophobic and freaky. But and when we all saw that's when we realized this is not a joke, right? This guy's mean business. So my turn comes. I'm watching the guy puke over to my left, and I'm thinking to myself, like, "Oh man, this is horrible." And now it's my turn, and of course, it's the like scariest drill sergeant there is, or one of them anyway. They were all pretty scary. Well, not all of them, but most of them. This guy starts. He's like, they call me Castle Nuts sometimes because I was kind of crazy, and he was like, "Oh wow, yeah, I don't know." It's anyways. I was sitting there, and he's like, "Ask you got to say your social security number." Um, your rank file, name, rank file, all that stuff. Like you start saying the stuff, and then it's like, no one. The whole time I was in there, I didn't hear one person say drill sergeant. And in the Marines, you say sir, yes sir. In the Army, you say drill sergeant, right? Because that's who trained you. And after you finish everything, you have to finish it with yes, drill sergeant, no, drill sergeant, blah blah blah, drill sergeant. It says like just routine, only for training. And so I'm in there, and after I'm answering everything, I'm like, uh, blah blah blah, drill sergeant, and blah blah blah, drill sergeant. You could tell he's getting frustrated, almost pissed at me for not choking or coughing. So then he tells me to sing the national anthem, and I'm like, oh man. And so while I'm singing the national anthem, he goes to the next guy. He starts coughing and hacking. Next guy, same thing. Next guy, same thing. He gets to the like second to last guy or the last guy, and then I start stumbling over the words, and he comes and runs back and gets right in my face, and he's like, "Oh, you about ready to puke, Castleberry? You about ready to give out?" I'm like just sitting there looking him in the face, and I'm like, "No, drill sergeant, I forgot the words." And he was like, "Get the hell out of my gas chamber!" And we all left after that. But he was like, the other guys were starting to die, waiting for me to choke up, and they never got me. As soon as I walked out the door, though, man, the snot was a flowing. So breathing is really important, and I'm not advocating smoking doobies by any means, but I don't advocate going into gas chambers either, by the way, especially willing. Um, Let me see your wolf face. Ah, yeah, you remember the story. Let me hear your wolf cry. So I don't know. That was a really good one, but I couldn't believe I went to watch the breathing video to go to sleep to, and then he talked about grief and everything. And then the internet comes back on, and we just talked about grief. So I wanted to come share that bit that we already talked about grief. And now we've talked about breathing. And so it's probably about time to get back in to the devotional because we were just in the second devotional about prayer, and it was about to get really interesting. Not that it hadn't been prior to, but thanks for the slow clap there, Amba. Glad to see you. Um, I can't, Colin said that you have to go through the gas chamber 3 times in the Australian Army. Basic training. That's pretty hardcore. But I've heard those Australians are pretty hardcore too, so that's not a surprise. Let's see here. Okay, so we were in the November 3rd evening devotional, and I'm gonna go ahead and start it fresh, but that's where we had talked about Leviathan, and I kind of got off track a little bit because it's an interesting topic. Um, and that's why I blame the internet on him, is jokingly, but it's ultimately about prayer, right? So the first one was basically don't hold your prayer back. You don't have to have the perfect speech or the perfect words, or you don't have to worry about if it's too much or not enough. As long as it's truly from your heart and you're offering it to God, even if you're angry at God, you can yell at him. It's okay. I mean, it's whatever it is that you have to give to God, he's going to be thankful to receive it, and he's going to understand where you're coming from. And I've said some things I don't mean to God, and he knew I didn't mean them, and I'm pretty sure, it hurts him to hear some of the things that we want to say to him at times when we're angry at life or whatever it is that's going on. But we need to remember his ways aren't ours and how much higher his ways are. And so there's things he knows that we can't know, or there's things he sees we can't see. And when we understand that, then it's not really him that we're mad at, ultimately, but it takes us some time to get out of our feelings to realize it. And he cares, even though sometimes it might not feel like it based on what's going on around you, or maybe somebody you love or care about seeing what's happening to somebody else. Sometimes that's even worse. A lot of times we don't care about ourselves, right? But if it happens to somebody close to us, our kids or whatever, then yeah, then we can relate, and hell hath no wrath, right? But since he does know our hearts, it's important for us to offer our heart to him and to open it to him, and but not just secretly, but to openly share it with God. Not to just assume he's all knowing and so he knows and so you don't have to offer it. You don't, I'm not saying you have to vocalize it, but I'm saying it is important. Sharing is caring. So if God cares and you care about him, then feel free to share